Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop chasing, they suddenly start thinking about you nonstop? Not because you forced them, not because you manipulated them, but because your inner world shifted so powerfully, they could no longer escape your presence. Tonight, you are about to discover the secret Neville Goddard taught about consciousness, assumption, and energetic certainty, the very thing that makes a specific person feel you everywhere they go, until pretending they don't care becomes impossible. Your specific person is not separate from your consciousness. The moment you change your self-concept and assume the love you desire is already yours, the outer world begins to mirror that truth back to you. In this video, you'll learn how to embody the state that naturally draws them in, occupies their thoughts, and makes your presence unforgettable without force, fear, or chasing. You must understand something that changes everything. The moment you begin chasing another person for love, attention, validation, or reassurance, you unknowingly declare that they possess something you do not. And the world always reflects that confession back to you. That is why the more you chase, the more distant they appear. The more you beg for proof, the less secure you feel. You are trying to force the mirror to smile while you remain unconvinced within yourself. But the outer world is not the cause. It is the effect. Most people spend their lives hypnotized by appearances. They check messages, analyze silence, overthink every word, every delay, every social media post. They wake up asking, what are they feeling about me? Instead of asking the only question that truly matters. What am I assuming to be true? Because your assumptions are shaping your reality every single moment. If you assume you are forgotten, you will find evidence of it. If you assume you are unwanted, reality will echo that belief through people, circumstances, and experiences. Not because life is punishing you, but because consciousness always expresses itself outwardly. So stop fighting shadows. A shadow has no power of its own. It only reflects the object standing before the light. And the world around you is doing the same thing. It is reflecting your dominant inner state. That specific person is responding to the energy, identity, and assumptions you continuously occupy. You say you want them to choose you, but inwardly you feel rejection. You say you want love, but secretly you feel abandoned. You say you want commitment, but every day you rehearse the possibility of loss. And then you wonder why reality keeps delivering the same experience in different forms. You cannot plant fear and expect love to grow from it. The transformation begins the moment you withdraw your attention from appearances and redirect it inward. Stop asking the world for permission to feel valuable. Stop needing constant evidence that you matter. The truth is, the version of you who already feels loved does not chase. They do not beg. They do not panic over silence because their security is not built upon external behavior. Can you imagine the freedom of that? To wake up in the morning no longer enslaved by someone else's actions. To feel chosen before the message arrives. To feel adored before the confirmation appears. That inner shift changes everything because reality responds not to what you want, but to what you believe yourself to be. And once you truly accept that, your energy changes naturally. There is a calmness that comes over a person who finally understands their worth. They stop forcing conversations. They stop over-explaining themselves. They stop trying to convince others to stay. Their presence becomes magnetic because they are no longer operating from fear. People can feel that. Never underestimate the silent power of self-conviction. When you no longer chase the world begins gravitating toward you. When you stop desperately trying to be seen, you become unforgettable. And the specific person you thought was drifting away suddenly begins thinking about you at unexpected moments. Your energy lingers in their mind because you are no longer projecting lack. You are embodying completeness. That is the secret most people never discover. Love is not captured through force. It is reflected through state of being. So if you want different results, do not change the person. Change yourself. Change the story you repeat in your mind. Change the identity you wake up embodying every day. Stop identifying as the one who is ignored, abandoned, or emotionally starving. Become the one who is naturally cherished, naturally remembered, naturally pursued. Because the world cannot continue showing you a version of reality that no longer matches who you believe yourself to be. Most people delay their happiness because they believe fulfillment exists somewhere in the future. They say, I will feel loved when the message comes. I will feel secure when they commit. I will feel chosen when the relationship finally appears. But that way of thinking keeps desire permanently out of reach, because you are conditioning your inner state on external evidence. You must reverse it. You do not wait for the world to change before you feel fulfilled. You feel fulfilled first, and then the world reshapes itself to mirror your inner conviction. That is the law. Reality responds to the state you occupy consistently, not the wishes you occasionally entertain. So if you want love, stop identifying with the version of yourself who is waiting for it. Become the version of yourself who already has it. Right now, in this moment, close your eyes for a second and imagine the wish fulfilled. Not the process, not the struggle, not the how. Go straight to the end. See yourself already loved, already chosen, already secure. Hear their voice telling you how deeply they care about you. Feel the naturalness of being wanted. Feel the relief of no longer questioning where you stand. That feeling is the secret, not effort, not force, not obsession. Feeling, because what you deeply feel to be true becomes impressed upon your subconscious mind. And once something is accepted internally as reality, the outer world begins moving to reflect it back to you in physical form. This is why some people manifest effortlessly, while others struggle for years. One person keeps checking reality for confirmation, while the other person becomes inwardly convinced before the evidence even appears. You must understand this clearly. Imagination is not fantasy, it is spiritual reality. The moment you accept an imaginal act as true emotionally, you begin activating a completely different version of reality. Most people imagine from fear. They replay arguments, rejections, delays, silence. They rehearse being ignored over and over again in their minds, and then they wonder why life keeps presenting the same painful scenes. Your imagination is always creating. So ask yourself honestly, what are you emotionally loyal to every day? Are you loyal to loneliness, or are you loyal to the vision of already being loved? Because the subconscious accepts repetition wrapped in emotion. Whatever state you return to most often becomes your reality. If every night you fall asleep feeling abandoned, you continue feeding separation. But if you fall asleep feeling adored, chosen, valued, and connected, you begin planting entirely different seeds within consciousness. And those seeds must grow. Do not concern yourself with time. Time is only the bridge between your assumption and its physical expression. The deeper your conviction, the faster reality reorganizes itself around you. That is why you must stop looking at present circumstances as final. They are only echoes of old assumptions. The current moment is showing you what you previously believed, not what is possible now. The power is always in the present moment. You can change the entire direction of your reality by changing the feeling you accept within yourself today. So when doubt appears, return to the end. When fear whispers, return to the end. When the outer world looks unchanged, return to the end. Persist in the feeling that your desire is already yours until it begins to feel natural. Until you no longer react to appearances, because inwardly you already know. There comes a moment when the imagined state starts feeling more real than current circumstances. That is the turning point. That is when your energy shifts completely. You stop hoping and start knowing, and people feel that change. Your specific person begins sensing your presence differently because you are no longer transmitting neediness or fear. You are inwardly living from fulfillment. There is a calm confidence in someone who already feels chosen within themselves. They are not anxiously waiting for love because emotionally they are already experiencing it now, and the world always rushes to mirror what feels natural to you internally. Listen carefully, because this may be the very thing that changes your relationships forever. People do not simply respond to your words, your appearance, or your actions. They respond to the concept you hold of yourself. The world is constantly reflecting your inner identity back to you through the behavior of others. If deep within yourself you believe you are difficult to love, life will find ways to confirm it. If you secretly feel replaceable, ignored, abandoned, or not enough, then even the people who care about you may begin acting in ways that mirror those hidden assumptions. Not because they are intentionally trying to hurt you, but because your consciousness is always projecting itself outward. Most people try to change others without ever changing themselves. They ask, why are they pulling away? Why are they inconsistent? Why don't they value me? But they never stop to examine the story they are carrying about themselves every single day. You cannot continuously identify as unwanted and expect to be pursued. You cannot secretly believe you are second best and expect to feel prioritized. The outer world can only echo the inner world. So the question is not, what do they think about me? The real question is, what do I think about myself? Because that silent inner conversation becomes your reality. There are people walking through this world who naturally receive love, respect, loyalty, and admiration almost effortlessly. And it is not because they are perfect. It is because at their core, they have accepted themselves as worthy of those experiences. Their energy communicates value before they even speak. Then there are others who constantly fear rejection, constantly overanalyze, constantly seek reassurance. Even when love is offered to them, they struggle to trust it because internally they are identified with insecurity. You must understand this. Your self-concept shapes how people perceive and treat you. If you wake up every day assuming, I am always abandoned, I am never chosen, people lose interest in me, then you continue feeding a reality that reflects those beliefs back to you. But the moment you begin changing the inner identity, everything shifts. Walk through life as the version of yourself who is deeply valued. Speak from that identity. Think from that identity. Feel from that identity. Stop measuring your worth based on temporary circumstances or someone else's behavior. Your value is not determined by a delayed text message. Your worth is not determined by someone's inconsistency. Your lovability is not determined by the past. The past only survives if you continue identifying with it. And many people do exactly that. They keep resurrecting old pain through memory and expectation. They carry heartbreak into every new moment and then wonder why reality keeps repeating itself. But consciousness does not care about what happened yesterday. It responds to who you believe yourself to be now. That is why self-concept is everything. When you truly begin seeing yourself differently, your energy changes naturally. You stop begging for attention because you no longer feel emotionally starving. You stop fearing silence because your peace no longer depends on external validation. You stop chasing people because you finally understand your own magnetic value. And strangely enough, that is when people begin gravitating towards you. Because confidence rooted in self-worth is deeply attractive. Not arrogance, not ego, inner certainty. There is something unforgettable about a person who knows they are worthy without needing constant proof. Their presence feels calm, secure, grounded. They are no longer trying to convince others to love them because they already feel complete within themselves. And the world notices that shift immediately. Your specific person notices it too. They begin sensing your absence differently. Your energy lingers in their thoughts because you are no longer showing up as someone afraid of losing them. You become emotionally powerful because your identity is no longer built on fear. So stop defining yourself by rejection. Stop repeating the old story of disappointment. Stop worshiping a version of yourself that suffers. You were never meant to live as someone waiting to be chosen. Become the person who already knows they are unforgettable, valuable, desired, and worthy of deep love. Because once that assumption hardens into conviction within you, the outer world has no choice but to mirror it back through people, circumstances, and experiences. Most people are terrified of silence because silence forces them to confront what they truly believe about themselves. The moment the phone becomes quiet, the moment the message does not arrive, the mind immediately begins creating fearful stories. Maybe they lost interest. Maybe they stopped caring. Maybe I am being forgotten. And without realizing it, they begin feeding life into the very reality they fear. But silence was never your enemy. Your reaction to silence is what shapes the experience. You see, when a person constantly chases, constantly checks, constantly forces movement, they are operating from panic. And panic carries a certain energy. It says, I am afraid I do not have what I desire. That fear becomes impressed upon the subconscious, and the outer world faithfully reflects it back. But there is another way to exist. There is a state where silence no longer feels threatening. because you are no longer depending on the outer world to define your worth. In that state, you stop forcing communication. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes. You stop exhausting yourself searching for signs. And something extraordinary begins to happen. Your silence becomes magnetic, not because you are playing games, not because you are pretending not to care, but because your energy is no longer screaming with need. There is calmness in you, certainty in you, inner stability in you, and people can feel that shift even from a distance. Never underestimate the power of emotional self-control. A person who remains inwardly fulfilled without constant reassurance becomes incredibly compelling. Why? Because they are no longer chasing energy outward. They are centered within themselves. Most people speak too much because they are trying to fill the emptiness they feel inside. But someone who feels whole within themselves carries a different presence entirely. Their silence speaks confidence. Their stillness speaks value. And suddenly, the specific person who once seemed distant begins thinking about you more intensely than before. Why? Because energy changes everything. The moment you stop reacting desperately to appearances, you interrupt the old pattern. You stop feeding the story of rejection. You stop identifying as the abandoned version of yourself. Instead, you become emotionally grounded in the assumption that you are already loved, already remembered, already important. And from that state, silence no longer feels like loss. It feels peaceful. That peace is powerful because it removes resistance. Most suffering comes from fighting current circumstances. People argue mentally with reality all day long. They obsess over what is missing. They replay painful scenarios. They desperately try to force movement before consciousness has fully rearranged the outer world. But force delays manifestation. Trust accelerates it. The moment you relax internally and stop demanding immediate proof, your subconscious begins operating without interference. You stop digging up the seed every 5 minutes to check if it has grown. You simply know it is unfolding beneath the surface, and that knowing creates magnetism. There is something unforgettable about a person who no longer reacts from fear. Their energy becomes spacious, calm, attractive. Others begin feeling drawn toward them naturally because they are no longer projecting emotional chaos. Think about it carefully. Have you ever noticed how people often return the moment you finally let go of desperation? The moment you stop obsessing, stop checking, stop needing? That is not coincidence. It is energetic transformation. You shifted from lack to inner completeness. And when you embody completeness, people begin sensing your absence differently. Your silence becomes loud in their mind. They wonder about you. They feel your energy lingering around them because you are no longer emotionally chasing them away with fear. This is why inner stillness is so important. Do not confuse stillness with giving up. True stillness is confidence. It is the deep inner knowing that what is meant for you is already moving toward you. It is remaining faithful to your desired reality even when the outer world has not fully caught up yet. So when silence appears, do not panic. Do not rush to fill the void. Do not abandon your power by assuming the worst. Instead, remain inwardly aligned with the version of yourself who is already loved and chosen. Because the person who masters inner calm becomes impossible to ignore. You must become aware of the conversations you are having within yourself every single day. Because those silent assumptions are not remaining hidden inside you. They are being projected outward constantly, shaping the way people respond to you, think about you, and feel about you. Whether you realize it or not, you are always transmitting a state of consciousness. Most people do this unconsciously. They wake up and immediately begin affirming limitation without even noticing it. They never text first. They are losing interest. I always get ignored. Love never works out for me. And then they continue repeating these thoughts emotionally throughout the day until those assumptions harden into reality. You must understand that a persistent assumption, whether positive or negative, eventually externalizes itself. Life has no choice but to mirror what you consistently accept as true. If you repeatedly assume rejection, you begin carrying the energy of rejection. Your reactions change. Your expectations change. Your emotional state changes. And then the outer world obediently reflects those assumptions back through circumstances and behavior. But imagine what would happen if you became equally persistent in a new assumption. Imagine waking up each day with the inner knowing, they adore me, they think about me constantly, they feel deeply connected to me, I am unforgettable to them. At first, the mind may resist because it has become addicted to old stories. But if you persist, something begins to shift internally. Your emotional state changes, your posture changes, your reactions soften. You stop interpreting every silence as rejection because inwardly you are no longer identified with fear. And that inner transformation changes everything. People feel what you consistently assume because consciousness is interconnected, far beyond what the physical senses can understand. Thoughts saturated with emotion carry energy, and the state you occupy most dominantly influences the reality you experience. That is why two people can experience the exact same situation completely differently. One person interprets distance as abandonment while another remains calm and secure. One spirals into fear while the other remains grounded in certainty. The difference is not the circumstance itself. The difference is the assumption each person holds within. You must stop giving power to temporary appearances and start giving power to your inner conviction instead. The outer world is fluid. It is constantly responding to consciousness. But most people keep recreating the same painful experiences because they remain emotionally loyal to old assumptions. They keep expecting disappointment. They keep preparing for rejection before it even happens. And what you expect emotionally, you often receive. So if you desire a different outcome, you must become disciplined with your inner speech. Not occasionally, consistently. Do not spend 10 minutes affirming love and then spend the next 10 hours imagining worst-case scenarios. The subconscious responds to what you persist in emotionally. Your dominant state always wins. This is why persistence matters so much. When you continue assuming you are loved despite appearances, you begin stabilizing a new reality within yourself. You stop reacting to fear because your inner world becomes stronger than external circumstances. And eventually, the outer world begins conforming to the new assumption you have accepted. Suddenly, the specific person who seemed distant begins reaching out. They think about you unexpectedly. They feel drawn toward you without fully understanding why. Your presence starts occupying their mind because you have changed the inner script. Most people try to change behavior directly without changing consciousness first. But behavior is only the reflection. Consciousness is the cause, cham the assumption, and the reflection must eventually change too. Never underestimate the power of a sustained inner belief. A thought repeated with feeling becomes reality. That is why you must guard your mind carefully. Every fearful assumption planted repeatedly becomes a command to the subconscious. Every loving assumption planted repeatedly becomes a new experience waiting to unfold. So stop assuming you are forgotten. Stop assuming love is difficult. Stop assuming people leave. Those assumptions become self-fulfilling patterns. Instead, persist in the feeling that you are deeply valued, deeply remembered, and impossible to replace. Because once that assumption becomes natural within you, the people in your world begin responding to you from that new reality automatically. There comes a moment in your life when you must stop fearing the loss of others and start becoming someone whose presence is deeply valuable. Most people enter relationships already afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being replaced, afraid of not being enough, and that fear quietly controls their behavior. They overgive, overexplain, overchase, and overcompromise because deep down they believe love is something fragile that must constantly be earned. But love was never meant to be pursued from fear. The moment you begin placing another person on a pedestal while forgetting your own worth, you create imbalance. You start shrinking yourself emotionally. You begin seeking validation instead of embodying value. And without realizing it, you train yourself to believe that their attention determines your importance. No, you must reverse that completely. You must become so inwardly fulfilled, so emotionally grounded, so deeply aware of your own value that you stop living in fear of loss altogether. Because the truth is this: people naturally fear losing what feels rare, valuable, peaceful, and complete within itself. Think carefully about it. Why do people become magnetic? It is not because they beg for attention. It is not because they constantly seek approval. It is because they radiate a certain inner certainty. They carry themselves as if they already know their worth. That energy changes everything. When you truly value yourself, your entire presence transforms. You stop chasing because you no longer feel emotionally empty. You stop clinging because you no longer believe your happiness depends on another person's behavior. You stop tolerating crumbs because you finally understand that your energy is precious. And strangely enough, that is when people begin valuing you more deeply, because people mirror the importance you place upon yourself. If you constantly act as though losing someone would destroy you, they unconsciously feel that imbalance. But when you become emotionally secure within yourself, your presence gains weight, your attention gains value, your absence becomes noticeable. This does not mean becoming cold or arrogant. It means becoming whole. There is a powerful difference. A whole person loves without desperation. They give affection freely, not from fear, but from abundance. They do not constantly seek reassurance, because inwardly they already feel worthy. They are not obsessed with controlling outcomes, because their peace does not collapse when circumstances fluctuate. That kind of energy is unforgettable. Most people have never encountered someone who is deeply loving yet completely secure within themselves. That combination creates magnetism beyond explanation. It makes people think about you when you are absent. It makes them feel your energy lingering long after conversations end. And this begins with identity. You must stop identifying as someone who is easily forgotten. Stop identifying as someone who always gets hurt. Stop carrying the old story that says people leave you, disappoint you, or fail to recognize your worth. Those assumptions shape your reality. Instead, begin embodying the version of yourself who naturally inspires devotion. Walk like that person. Think like that person. Feel like that person now. Imagine how you would move through life if you truly knew you were irreplaceable. Would you panic over every delay? Would you beg for validation? Would you overanalyze every little thing? No. You would remain calm because your value would already feel secure within you. And that calmness becomes deeply attractive. People are drawn toward emotional certainty because most of the world operates from insecurity. The person who feels complete within themselves stands out immediately. Their energy feels safe, powerful, grounded. They are no longer emotionally grasping at others because they have already found stability within. This is why your relationship with yourself determines the quality of every relationship you experience. If you abandon yourself internally, you often attract experiences that mirror abandonment. But when you honor your own worth, reality begins reflecting that respect back to you through others. So stop asking how to make someone fear losing you. Become the kind of person whose energy naturally leaves an impact. Become someone whose presence feels peaceful, uplifting, and unforgettable. Become someone who no longer begs for love because they already embody it within themselves. And when you truly reach that state, people begin realizing your value without you needing to convince them at all. The greatest mistake people make is abandoning their new assumption the moment reality fails to change immediately. They affirm love for one day and then panic the next. They imagine the wish fulfilled at night and then spend the entire morning reacting to fear, doubt, and appearances. And because they keep returning to the old state emotionally, they continue recreating the same experiences over and over again. You must understand this clearly. Reality is not responding to one emotional moment. It responds to the state you persist in. Persistence is the secret that separates temporary hope from true transformation. Most people are controlled by appearances. If they do not receive a message, they assume failure. If circumstances remain unchanged for a week, they begin doubting themselves. If the outer world contradicts their desire, they immediately return to old thoughts of rejection and disappointment. But the person who understands the law remains faithful inwardly, even when the world has not caught up yet. That is power. Can you remain loyal to the vision of yourself, already loved, already chosen, already desired, even when physical reality seems silent? Can you hold your assumptions steady without needing constant proof? Because that inner faith is what eventually reshapes the outer world. Think of a seed planted into the earth. The moment it is planted, nothing appears to happen externally. The ground looks unchanged, but beneath the surface, life has already begun moving invisibly. Roots are forming, growth is happening quietly. And if someone becomes impatient and digs up the seed every day to check for progress, they interrupt the process entirely. This is exactly what most people do with manifestation. They plant a new assumption and then immediately destroy it through doubt, fear, and obsession with appearances. They keep asking, where is it? Why hasn't it happened yet? Not realizing that impatience itself is proof they have not fully accepted the wish internally. The person who truly believes does not panic. Vincent is not forcing. It is remaining internally faithful. That means when the old story appears, you do not emotionally move into it again. If silence appears, you do not immediately assume rejection. If circumstances seem delayed, you do not conclude failure. You remain anchored in the identity you have chosen. I am loved. I am remembered. I am chosen. My reality is already unfolding in my favor. Not because you see evidence yet, but because you understand consciousness creates reality from within outward. The outer world is always delayed. It is reflecting previous assumptions. So if you continue reacting emotionally to old circumstances, you continue feeding life into them. But when you persist in a new assumption long enough, reality eventually has no choice but to conform. That is why discipline of mind is essential. Every day, the old version of you will attempt to return. The fearful voice will whisper, nothing is changing. The anxious mind will search for reasons to doubt. But you must decide which reality you are loyal to, the temporary appearance or the inner vision you have accepted as truth. Because eventually, persistence changes your entire identity. At first, affirmations may feel unnatural. The desired reality may seem distant. But if you continue returning to the state fulfilled, it slowly becomes familiar, then natural, then undeniable. And once it feels natural within you, the outer world begins rearranging itself rapidly. People suddenly change. Circumstances shift unexpectedly. Opportunities appear from nowhere. The specific person begins reaching out, thinking about you, feeling drawn toward you, not because you forced reality, but because you remained faithful long enough for consciousness to harden into fact. Most people quit moments before the breakthrough. They allow temporary appearances to convince them that nothing is happening, while unseen movement is already taking place beneath the surface. Do not let the senses deceive you. The visible world is not the